Welcome to the Hello Sunday podcast with me, Nikki Hayden. This is the podcast that discusses everything self-development, spirituality and sobriety, and it wouldn't be me without a little sprinkling of humour. Whether you are just starting out on your journey of self-development or have been exploring these topics for years, are completely alcohol-free or just curious about living a more sober lifestyle, this is the podcast for you. Each week, I'll be exploring topics in both solo episodes and with some amazing guest experts. So if you like what you hear, then please subscribe, rate and review. So with that said, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, welcome back to another episode of Hello Sunday. It's good to be back, good to be in your ears for another week. It's a bit of a weird one this week. I think I probably just need to start by saying I'm fully aware in the UK at the moment, the things that are going on. I'm fully aware that there is a lot of unrest, a lot of anger, a lot of disruption, and let's be honest about this, a lot of people with the IQ of a ham sandwich smashing up things in the name of 3 little girls that died when we all know it's got nothing to do with that. I need to acknowledge that because I think it's been so much in the news this week and so on everybody's minds and weighing so heavy on our hearts that to not acknowledge it would kind of be a miss. But at the same time, this is a high vibe space. It is a safe space. It's somewhere we discuss self-development and we are not going to bring ourselves down with the low vibe energy of what's going on in the UK, specifically England at the moment. But I just needed to acknowledge it because I know sometimes it's really weird when stuff is going on that is so much bigger and people aren't talking about it. And I totally get why they don't. I totally get that if you are a content creator or somebody that posts a lot on social media or has any sort of platform, you'll get 2 types of people on that platform. You'll get the people who don't want to know about it and they come to your page or your podcast or your platform for the high vibe stuff and the content that you normally put out. And then you'll get other people messaging you, asking you why you're not talking about it. We don't need to talk about everything. We really don't. Like, not every single page. If every single page just spoke about the hate and the wars and everything that's going on in the world, then we'd have no spaces to go to for that uplift. But at the same time, it really does feel, because it's so close to home, that it would be amiss not to at least acknowledge it. So I hope everyone's staying safe. I hope that you're all good. And if you're listening to this in the future, I'm sure that it is long gone and things are, okay now. And that's what I hope and pray for. But anyway, let's get on to this week's topic. So it's come about a couple of times, to be honest with you. There's a couple of things that I've seen, read, and I make notes in my phone whenever I kind of come up against something that is really intriguing or it inspires me. Quite often I'll make a note in my phone about that topic, and sometimes I talk about it that week, sometimes it's not for a few weeks or even months down the line. But this has come up a couple of times now. I've seen a good couple of social media videos and TikToks and Instagram videos and reels and that sort of stuff about it. And then also it was actually something that was being discussed in like the context of sobriety as well, which led me to think actually this would be a really useful topic, because whether you're here just for the self-development or whether you're here for more of the sobriety talk, to be honest, this platform, this podcast is more about self-development in the context of sobriety or not. You don't have to be going through sobriety or cutting down alcohol. I've had a very interchangeable relationship with that this year, but it's in essence, it can apply to us all, a lot of the stuff that we talk about. So you can take from it what you want. But let me just talk about one of the videos that I saw, and then we can discuss how that, I guess, applies whether you are going through that sober journey or not. So there was a lady on, I think it was on Instagram, but I think she'd done a TikTok on it, and it had been, I mean, I'm not going to lie, I'm a very, very rare user of TikTok. Sometimes people will send me links, or I might have the odd scroll for inspiration, but it tends to be Instagram. I mean, I'm approaching 40 now. We all know that most of us at that age probably don't use TikTok that often. But it was something that had been reposted onto Instagram, and it was this lady who had got, she was basically showing an analogy of filling your life up with the good stuff. And she got a jar, like just a normal kind of like big bell jar. And she put into it ping pong balls that represented things like stories that you tell yourself, judgments of other people, the things that we're clinging on to that are maybe not, so good for us. They're not so positive in our lives, limiting beliefs. Then she put in lots of little balls and little bits, which were judgment from others, other people's opinions of you, etc., etc. And she probably filled the jar up to about a third. And then she said, imagine if this water is the good stuff that you start pouring into your life. It's the self-development work that you do. It's the spending time with really positive, uplifting, high vibe people. It's the cutting out of toxic behaviours, and you start filling up your jar. Now, she got to probably about another third full of water. And obviously at this point, all the ping pong balls and all the little bits that she's put in have started rising. And she said at this point, probably like maybe 50% of people will quit. Because as that stuff starts rising, as it starts coming up inside you, as it starts coming to the surface and you start having to deal with it, it's not fucking comfortable. It's really not comfortable. It can cause you to feel like you're going backwards. It can cause you to question everything in your life. And as that starts happening, if you're not aware that that's going to happen, it can often create a feeling in you of, I just want to go back to comfort and I just want to go back to safety. And again, back in the caveman days, if we ventured too far from the tribe, too far from our comfort zone and what we were used to, we could die, right? We would be on our own and we could literally die because there was predators. And our little brains, our little primate brains, our little monkey brains have not yet caught up with the concept of discomfort being growth. Not entirely, anyway. So at that point, quite a lot of people will quit. They will find it hard, they will find it uncomfortable. They'll basically decide that they want to go back to where they were and they'll revert back. And it's why people quit diets and fitness plans. It's why people will stop smoking and quite often go back to it. That discomfort, that feeling of, oh, this isn't, natural. It's not what I'm used to. The breaking of the habits is hard. She then started filling up a little bit more, putting some more water in, and the ping pong balls and all the bits inside were rising and rising, and she got to about 2/3 of the way up the jar. And then she said, and I don't know how clear these stats are, I think it's just, for those of you that are regular listeners to the show, or maybe you know me personally, you won't have been able to get away without hearing me talk about Simprove. Simprove is a scientifically backed, water-based probiotic drink. You drink it daily and it has been scientifically proven to help with things like bloating, IBS symptoms, pain. It was actually a dietitian friend of mine that introduced it to me last year, and I honestly wouldn't be without it now. It's helped with my energy, with my bloating, it's helped with my immune system, and also things like my skin. The list is honestly endless. Now, I have got a code for you. So if you'd like to try Simprove, you can get 50%, that's a massive 50% off your first 3-month subscription by going on to simprove.com and putting in the code Nikki50. That's NIKKI50, or clicking the link in the show notes. An analogy. I'm not saying that they've surveyed everyone on the planet to see who would quit at that point. But I think she said on average then another 20 or 30% of people, again, will quit. They'll get to a point where they've pushed through, and it just gets too much. It just gets too hard. The emotions are difficult to deal with. Maybe they don't have the right tools or support network to be able to deal with those emotions, and they will quit and go back to comfort and throw in the towel on all of that hard work they've done. And then she said, this is where the rest of us now are. We have pushed through probably 2 or 3 times where we felt like quitting. We're getting very, very close. This is the good stuff is overtaking all of the bad stuff. And at this point, some of the ping pong balls and bits have, started to fall out. There's still a good proportion of them still in there. So all of our stories, all of our limiting beliefs, all of our old toxic traits are still there, but they're just getting more overtaken and all encompassed by all of the good stuff that we're putting into our lives. And then she started filling it up more. And at this point, everything comes right to the surface, right to the top, starts spilling out. The ping pong balls start coming out. There's still a couple left in there. And she's like, at this point, this is where another 5% will quit. If you're going to quit, this is like the last point that you're going to do it. And then as soon as she's filled up the jar to the top, virtually all of that stuff has gone. It's probably 1 or 2 ping pong balls that are left at this point, and that's maybe just a couple of old limiting beliefs that are really tough to break. Maybe they've been ingrained since childhood, as most of them are. Maybe it's a couple of friendships or people or relationships in your life that it's more difficult to break away from. But at this point, the good stuff has overtaken the stuff that we had in the jar in the first place. And this is the point where if you can continue to get to that, if you can continue to do the work, and when I say work, I don't use that word lightly. This is freaking work. It's hard. It's facing things. It's dealing with things. It's pushing through. It's knowing that what's on the other side is better than what you are having to deal with, that it's worth it. It's having a why. And if you can get to that point, that is the point where everything changes and suddenly you become a different person. It's the point in sobriety where you probably got to the 6-9 month mark. It's the point in self-development where you're probably a few years down the line and so much has come up, because what will happen is you will do the first bit of self-development. Maybe you've recently entered into this journey. Maybe you've recently discovered the law of attraction and manifestation. Maybe you have recently gone through a breakup or something that has made you want to look at what you are doing with your life. But the first part of this journey is so exciting and elevating, and we get so caught up in it that it's like, oh my gosh, we've discovered the key to the secret garden, and it's like we know about something that no one else knows about. And then we start discovering like-minded people, and it's like a novelty. It's this thing that we realize it exists. But a few months down the line, things are going to come up. If you're doing the work, if you are confronting your limiting beliefs, if you are setting boundaries, if you are distancing yourself and cutting ties with toxic people in your life, it's hard. Those people don't just leave your life without a fight sometimes. It's breaking habits that you've had for years. And that doesn't come easily. So there will come a point where we'll all face resistance, where we will all potentially want to go back to that comfortable life and think, oh, actually, you know what, this is too hard. And it's breaking past that point, and then it will come up again. And I think I've said it before on here, but there's a lady called Denise Duffield Thomas she's a motivational speaker and manifestation expert and author. And she describes it as another level, another devil. And what that basically means is you don't get to this point unless you are, Buddha or the Dalai Lama, and you've got to a place of enlightenment in your life, which, sorry to break it to you, but I don't think many of us are actually going to achieve in this lifetime. Then you're always going to have new things to deal with. You may have dealt with one toxic relationship or one boundary that you needed to set, But something else is going to come up once you've got past that and you've broken through that point and dealt with that. And it's constant work. You will become stronger and more able to deal with it, and you will get a lot more tools in your arsenal and support along the way as you build that group and that circle of like-minded people, and you discover more tools and books and podcasts and people that are inspirational to you. But it never stops. This work never stops. And so you are constantly filling that jar, but there are constantly things coming to the surface. Now, the first part is always the hardest. The first point of breaking those habits and starting to create that life and pouring in those new things is always the hardest. But there are so many people that I know that have quit at the second or the third time that things have come up. For me, the most, I guess, recent, other than the kind of sobriety journey, the most recent and confronting part of my life or journey that I've gone on is setting up my business. It's like getting into a relationship. You can't deal with and face the demons and the things that come up for you within self-development in a relationship unless you're in a relationship. You can work on yourself and you can create those stronger boundaries and sense of self, but it's only when you're faced with the thing again, and that in that context is the relationship, that you're going to really be able to do that work. And it's the same in business. You set up a business and all of a sudden, all of the imposter syndrome thoughts come in. You are comparing yourself to people in the same space who might be 3, 4, 5 years further along on their journey. It creates a environment that you really have to build strength to be able to deal with. And that's just in your mind. Like nobody is creating that. Nobody is putting things in front of you intentionally. It's just normally you in your own mind. And so for me, getting through that initially last year was a challenge, but this year has been a whole different ball game because it's been a lot more challenging in different ways. I've had to learn skills that I didn't think that I would be able to. I've had to have conversations and negotiations that have been really uncomfortable. I've had to put myself out there to get rejected time and time again. And it's hard, I've been doing this work for 17 years, but doing it for yourself and being judged for you rather than as part of someone else's business is really difficult. And in the context of sobriety, what I tend to find is people will get sober, they will quit drinking, they will do the first maybe 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, and it's a bit of a novelty. It's exciting. You're discovering which soft drinks and alcohol replacements work for you. You're making plans on a Sunday that, was previously a day that you didn't know existed. You are finding support groups and podcasts and literature. And then all of a sudden, the novelty wears off a bit and you realise that this is something that you are committing to. And the doubt creeps in. Are you sure, maybe I could just moderate. Maybe I could just have 1 or 2 drinks. And for some people, that's fine. For some people, you can do that. I'd probably say maybe not after 6 weeks. You probably need to do a good 3 to 6 months. But for a lot of people that are doing it for reasons that they know they have to, i.e. they're becoming dependent or it's causing issues in their life or they're having health problems, that really isn't an option. And suddenly it becomes that little voice inside your mind that will come up and start questioning you and start casting doubt over what you're doing and basically wanting you to go back into that comfort zone. And also what comes with sobriety then is the self-development, the realising that there are people in your life that are, I don't really like to use the word toxic because I think it's not always people that are toxic. It's sometimes just the combination of 2 people in that relationship or friendship. But let's just, for the purpose of this, use the word toxic to describe the context of that relationship. Cutting ties with that or getting that person further away from you or out of your life can be really hard because that might not be what they want. They might not be on that journey. When you start setting boundaries, people will suddenly start saying, oh, you've changed. And yeah, you have. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with change. It's a good thing. But if they're not also going through that at the same time and embracing it, it's going to be difficult for them. It's going to be really tricky for them to come to terms with the fact that you're no longer going to be available all the time, or not putting up your boundaries and putting up walls and making decisions that serve you. So things become discomfortable, that's not a word, uncomfortable. And you will find yourself in a position where that voice will say, but maybe we could just do this, or this doesn't feel good. And it's not going to always feel good. It is really genuinely not going to always feel good. You'll have that high, you'll have that period of self-discovery, and then it gets hard. That's when the real work starts. And that's when you are a third of the way up that jar and some of the stuff is coming to the surface. Now, in the context of sobriety, as well as all the other shit that we've got going on, we will also have things like feelings of shame, feelings of guilt. Maybe you'll be remembering stories that, things that you've done, people that you've hurt, things that you've done when you were drunk or intoxicated. There are so many extra things that we have to deal with when we are suddenly faced with our emotions and our own thoughts, when previously we've numbed them out. If you used to go out on a Friday, Saturday, get absolutely blind drunk, not really deal with your emotions, and then just do the same all over again, you might have maybe had a point in the week where you'd get those little stories or memories coming back to you, or you'd get flashbacks from the weekend. But if you're anything like me, you just bury them back down and then do it all over again. Suddenly, when you are exploring sobriety, that is not something that you're going to be doing. You're going to be left with that feeling and that emotion. And it's hard to know what to do with it. You've got to work through it. You've got to release the guilt, release the shame, maybe have conversations with those people that you feel you might have hurt or you might have impacted. I know for me that really helped. So you've got all this stuff coming up, and that's the first layer. And if you quit then, if you come back to it in the future, you've got to do it all again. So you've got to have that why, you've got to have that belief in what it is that you're trying to achieve and what you're trying to do. And whether it's just for general self-development, whether you need to put in place boundaries, or that you want to work on the stories and the limiting beliefs that you're telling yourself because you're not progressing, you're not getting to fulfill your potential, or whether it is because you are going sober because you know that alcohol is not a positive influence in your life, you're going to get to this point. You've got to keep pouring in the good stuff. At that point, you need to be really pouring into yourself. So doing the work, uncovering the limiting beliefs, facing those emotions, listening to positive podcasts like this one and others. And I might have said this before, in fact, I know that I have, but the Hello Sunday podcast Instagram only follows accounts that are either self-development, sobriety, law of attraction, manifestation, uplifting, self-development focused accounts. So if you're ever thinking, I've not got enough positive stuff within, my social media feed, go and have a look at the accounts that the podcast follows. Read the literature and the books. Create an environment within your own life where you've got a support network, whether it is in real life, or maybe if that's not possible, maybe if your friends that you normally see on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis aren't on this journey, go and find an online community. I've got friends online that I've never ever met in real life that are such big supports to me. Those people I probably would never have met in real life because of where they live or the jobs that they do, and we would never have crossed paths, or very unlikely. So at that point, you need to be pouring in and putting in the good stuff. And the higher that those balls raise up that jar, the more difficult it's going to get to face some of that stuff. But the more good stuff that you pour in, eventually it will all come to the surface, it will all come out. And then you'll find that the things that you're dealing with are less frequent. So there will come points where, especially with the events of things that have gone on maybe in the UK over, the last couple of weeks, where you do find yourself in a low place, or you're questioning things, you maybe have communication from somebody that you thought that you had disconnected from, or maybe you start wanting to go back to old behaviours. My husband quit vaping at the start of this year. He's done absolutely incredibly. He's gone on a fitness journey, a health journey. He's literally turned his entire health and fitness around, and quitting vaping was part of that. But there's times when he'll say to me, I've really just had a craving for a vape. And for him, it would be so easy to just say, do you know what, I'm just going to have a vape. But he hasn't done it, and he assures me that that's not something that he's going to do, because actually the positives and the things that have come from that, the better sleep, the better fitness, cardio fitness, able to run and do weights, not having that horrible taste in your mouth in the morning, not having a cough, all of those things far outweigh that craving. But he still has it, and that was 8-9 months ago now. So you're going to get things come up. You're going to get things that will make you want to reconnect with that old friend because maybe they've messaged you and made you feel guilty, or maybe you want to go back to a job that you know wasn't good for you because you're currently out of work and it'd be the easy solution. There's so many things and so many layers to this that could come up and affect you. And it's tough. It's really tough. But just think of that jar. Keep pouring in the good stuff and just keep bringing all of the other things to the surface. And the longer that you do it for, the more that you stick to it, the more consistent you get, the more that you pour into yourself, the easier it gets, and the less that those things will come to the surface, the less that you'll have to deal with. So I just felt like that was such a cool analogy. It was something that I really related to, and sometimes you don't necessarily understand things unless they're in like picture form. Like for me, having that picture in my mind, every time I've got free time now, or there's something that I want to do, I'll just question like, what is the best use of this time? Is it to sit and scroll on my phone for what I think will be 10 minutes, which quite often turns into an hour? Or could I be doing something better? Could I be voice noting a friend that I haven't spoken to for a while, or listening to a podcast on a self-development topic, or going and creating something, being arty, or doing something with that time that is a creative outlet? There's so many better ways. And I'm not saying don't ever scroll on your phone. We live in, Western culture, in modern society. It's not feasible. But if you've created and curated a positive space for yourself on social media, it's not so bad. I quite often use the podcast Instagram if I want to scroll rather than my own, because I know that over the last few years, there's accounts that have slipped through the net, and probably people that aren't as positive that I still follow on there. And I do need to sit down and curate that and look at it. But like I say, the podcast Instagram only follows really positive accounts, and not just positive as in, it's not toxic positivity. It's just self-development accounts. So it might not necessarily be a positive message that they're posting, but it will get me thinking, as opposed to just something that is pure entertainment that might make me feel crap. So have a think about, where are the areas in your life that you can pour into yourself more? Where are the areas in your life that maybe, have come up for you recently? Do you need to set boundaries? Are you still in contact with people that you know are not positive for you? Do you need to cut back, or maybe stop drinking for a while, or for good? Are there things that when you're listening to this are instant kind of, oh my God, yeah, that is something that I know I need to look at and to address, but it's just so uncomfortable? Because if it's uncomfortable, that's growth. That's where the growth is going to come from. And it's better to face that now than to get to 1, 2, 5, 10 years down the line and think, oh, I wish I would have done that then. Because believe me, the older you get, the harder this stuff gets. Yes, you've got more awareness, but you've been doing these habits, you've been creating these environments for yourself for a lot longer. And the longer you do something, the harder it is to break, the harder it is to address and to face and to change. So I hope that that's been useful. I really do. And yeah, if there's any feedback, anything relating to this that you want to chat through, as always, I I'm all ears. The inbox for the podcast and the emails are always open. I think I'm going to put a little poll on next week as well to see, not a poll, a question box, to see if there are things that you are interested in me covering, topics. I really want to make this your podcast. I want to make it as useful and as interesting for you guys as possible. So please follow the Hello Sunday Instagram page. It's in the show notes. The link is there. I always put the questions in on that because that's probably what, it's a little bit more relevant for my audience than my normal Instagram page. Feel free to follow my personal Insta too, but all of the questions, the polls will always be on the Hello Sunday page. So have a fantastic week and I will chat to you all next week. Thanks for listening. You can find us on Instagram at HelloSundayPod, or you can email us on hellosundaypod@outlook.com. Have a great week.